Is Jesus a figment of our imagination, or is there proof that he was an actual historical person? And today we find evidence from atheists, Roman historians, and so let's get into it. The first one we find is Dr. Bart Ehrman, who is an atheist who's written multiple books on how Jesus wasn't God, that Jesus wasn't the Son of God. He isn't a person of faith, and we don't agree with him. But this is what he says. Most scholars, no matter what their faith, believe that Jesus was a Jewish man, that he was a preacher and teacher, that he was crucified in Jerusalem during the reign of Roman Emperor Tiberius when Pontius Pilate was the governor of Judea. Why is that important? Because in the Gospel of Luke, it talks about the Emperor Tiberius Caesar and Pontius Pilate. It confirms the scripture account and the historicity of that. And the reality is, this is what he says. Bart Ehrman says the reality is that we don't have archaeological records for virtually anyone in Jesus' time. Anyone. And so, why would we have them about Jesus? But there's better news here. Two great archaeologist discoveries have corroborated elements of New Testament story of Jesus. The first one is crucifixion. Scientists say wounds found on the heel of a man buried some 2,000 years ago in southern Italy suggest he was nailed to a wooden cross, just like Jesus, just like in the Bible, just like in Scripture. And so, according to the Bible, we know Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem under Roman rule at a time between AD 36 and 30. And though historical accounts of crucifixion, we have many of them, there's only two records of finding archaeological evidence of this. So we find that this confirms the truth of the practice of crucifixion in the Bible, which Jesus was crucified. So it confirms the Bible, it confirms what we want to know. And then this brings us on to the second very amazing discovery that an archaeologist found, and he has actually found and claimed this to be the childhood home of Jesus Christ. And so this archaeologist, he wasn't even looking for the house of Jesus. And this is why it is so amazing, because this wasn't what he was looking for. He wasn't searching this out, but he claims it's as close as someone will ever get to calling this the ancient childhood home of Jesus. And so he said this ancient dwelling was located beneath a Byzantine area church, which in turn lies beneath the Sisters of Nazareth convent. So it was hidden for years and years and years. And this is how he explains it, that they know from written evidence that this church was believed to be in the Byzantine period of ancient history. And that's important because it was claimed to have been built on the site of Jesus' home. That was the claim. And the dwelling preserved in his crypt. And this is what he says. It almost certainly is the church of the nutrition, which was dedicated to the upbringing of Christ and mentioned in a 7th century pilgrim's account. So there's multiple layers of confirmation here. And he said whoever had built the house had excellent knowledge of stoneworking, of carpentry, and this is the sort of thing, right, that would be expected of someone who had been called a tecton. And that word tecton is the ancient word for craftsman that was used to refer to no other than Joseph, the father of Jesus in Scripture. And so the archaeologists said, well, all the factors, they don't prove it was Jesus' home, that this is about as close as we'll probably ever get to being able to say it was Jesus' home. And so let's bring us to the next historical witness that proves Jesus was real and existed, and that is Josephus, who was born, a Jewish historian, and he was born in Jerusalem 4 years after the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, right? 4 years. So it's very close to the life of Jesus, and scholars view Josephus, who was a Jew, a politician, and a soldier, as the single most important Jewish historian of the ancient world. And he wrote a book called Antiquity of the Jews. And in this book, Antiquity of the Jews, it gives us some confirmation of the historical Jesus. In Antiquity 20.200, for example, Josephus writes about the death of James at the instigation of a high priest, and he clearly labels James as the brother of Jesus. And he doesn't just say brother of Jesus, but he says brother of Jesus, who are called the Christ. And so he confirms the familyhood of Jesus. James was real, Jesus was real. The next person that we come to is a Roman historian, okay, who was born 25 years after Jesus' death, writes 80 years after that, and his name is Tacitus. And Tacitus lived between AD 56, and he writes about, in his writings, he writes about Nero blaming the Christians for a fire that broke out and persecuting them. And he also puts this very important phrase in his writing, and it says, their name comes from Christ, who during the reign of Tiberius had been executed by Governor Pontius Pilate. Did you hear that? Right? This is a Roman. He has no invested interest in proving the historical story and the story of the Bible, but here he is doing it because we find in the Gospel of Luke what happens. We know Tiberius Caesar was the governor, and it talks about Pontius Pilate putting Jesus to death. So these pieces come together to prove that Jesus existed. He was a real person, and on top of that, the Bible is accurate from these witnesses in other parts of history. And so then we get to the last part here, and what do we find? We're going to go to the Bible, to Scripture, to 1 John 1:1. And in 1 John 1:1, we have this very important verse that the disciple John puts in his letter. And this is when John is an older man. This is when he had been up in years. And this is what it says. That which was from the beginning, all right? That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked at and our hands have touched, this we proclaim concerning the word of life. So this is exciting because John is writing from the perspective of what is he is saying. He is testifying that he has heard Jesus, that he has seen Jesus with his own eyes, that he has looked at, and his hands have touched God in the flesh. Right? So John starts out his epistle, right? 1 John, with what? Saying, this isn't just a letter. This isn't just something I made up, but this is something I've gathered from my experience of being with God in the flesh. And so these are the phrases that an eyewitness Jesus, not a storyteller. So here we have a corroboration that Jesus was a historical figure, because Apostle John was a historical figure, and he is speaking about his experience with Jesus. And so we have this great truth that Jesus did exist, and he did change the world. And so if you've enjoyed this content and you want to see more, make sure you like and subscribe, and have a great day.